Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
In my life, I've learned an important lesson. My age doesn't define who I am. I do.
Comfort Keepers believes in the power of joy and purpose at any age.
In my life, there is a Comfort Keeper.
Comfort Keepers, elevating the human spirit.
Call 855-592-0013 to find uplifting in-home care for the senior in your life. That's 855-592-0013.
All right, 19 minutes before, 21 minutes after 10 o'clock. What am I looking at? Two different times here. Got to fix one of these clocks. 21 minutes after 10 o'clock. It's a beautiful day out there, and thank you for tuning in. Every once in a while, we will have an important public service announcement that we will put on the air that is in both English and in Spanish. And it's a reminder that here in Florida, we have a lot of Spanish-speaking people in our community. If I were to switch jobs, for example, and move down to the Miami area,
yes.
Most of the radio jobs that I see listed are requiring that the announcers are bilingual. And you can speak both English and Spanish.
Exactly.
So I'm trying. I'm working. I get a little bit. I'm pretty good at reading it. I'm not so good at speaking it or even hearing it. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. I can read Spanish, and I go to the grocery store and I'll hear a couple of people speaking Spanish. And oh my gosh, I can only pick up on a little bit of it.
Yeah,
it takes a while, right, to learn a new language.
Mm-hmm.
Chanel Cleeton is on the phone. She has a doctoral degree in law. She grew up on stories of her family's exodus from Cuba following the events of the Cuban Revolution. My gosh, and the folks who are involved with all that and have that history, it's an amazing story. So she tells part of that story in her best-selling book. I just went on Amazon, and it's number one. It's number one in, let me find the category.
Congratulations.
In the Hispanic American Literature and Fiction category. The book is called When We Left Cuba. It's a novel set in the 1960s in Florida in the wake of Fidel Castro's political ascension. Chanel, it's an honor to have you on our show. I'm so interested in your story. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Where are you?
I'm in Dallas right now. I'm on book tour, so I've been traveling around the country speaking to readers about the book.
Is Florida your home?
It is originally. I don't live there anymore, but I was born in Gainesville, actually, so close by to you. And,
oh, wow.
Yes, kind of moved around the state a bit and left when I went to university.
Did your parents speak Spanish in the house, in home?
My father's Cuban, and he did, and my grandparents actually lived with us, and they're Cuban and speak Spanish, so I spoke it growing up with them.
So you got it. You got both of them down pat, right? You got the two languages. See, that's what you need. If you're going to be in radio in Miami, you got to have both of them.
Well, for the most part, yes. I will say it's one of those things where if you don't practice as much and you're not as immersed in the environment, it's easy to kind of lose some of those skills, but I was very fortunate to grow up with that at home.
So in the book, When We Left Cuba, you're getting some really good remarks on the, the review section on Amazon. And I'm thinking because it's real. People who read your story recognize it.
Yes, I mean, my hope is that Cuban Americans will sort of see themselves in the books and see some of their family's memories and perhaps some of the stories that they've grown up on. And I've been really fortunate. I traveled around Florida quite a bit at the beginning of my tour to have readers really come up to me and share those stories and how those stories have affected them.
This is part of a series. Can this also be standalone?
Yes, it can. So the first book, Next Year in Havana, is set around a family, and one of the sisters is the protagonist. And it sort of covers the lead up to the revolution and then the revolution itself, and is primarily set in Cuba. And then the new book takes another sister's story and picks up in the 60s after they've come to the United States. So you can jump right in with her story and read it as a standalone if you'd like. And
Beatriz is a very fascinating character because even in her personal life, she's balancing two worlds.
Yes, thank you. She was definitely a fun character to write, and she does have that sort of dichotomy of being in a different environment and trying to adjust to that while also still having these very strong ties and emotion to Cuba that I think so many Cuban Americans can identify with.
So tell me about yourself as a writer. It looks like you've done a lot of writing. Was the idea to take some family history and incorporate it into a novel? Was that something you had in the back of your mind all these years?
Funnily enough, it sort of came up with a story that my father told me. It was the summer of 2016, and even though I'd grown up on my family's stories of Cuba, he actually told me a new story that I'd never heard, and it was of a night before they left Havana in 1967, when everyone sort of met in the backyard of my grandparents' home under the dead of night, and they buried all of their valuables, since they wouldn't be able to take them with them when they left the country, and they didn't know how long they would be gone. And so as soon as I heard that story, I was just struck with the idea of, if you were forced to leave, the only home you'd ever known, and you didn't know when you would return, what would you choose to save for when you could go back? And that question's really what sparked Next Year in Havana. And then as soon as I met Beatrice's character, I knew I wanted her to have her own book as well.
Well, that's a cool story. So did your dad ever go back and get the stuff?
He hasn't. We were planning a trip back, and my grandfather, who's almost 96, just feels really strongly about us not supporting the regime and didn't want to see it in his lifetime. He kind of wanted to remember it as he knew it from when he left. So we just made that decision to not go back at that time.
Gotcha, right.
I like your statement, is home where you come from or where you build it?
Yes.
That is a great statement.
Oh, well, thank you. And that's definitely something my characters grapple with, and I think many people in exile have also had to reconcile as well.
So through the telling of the story, do we get a better, for those of us who don't know the history of that, do we get a sense of what happened?
Yes, it was very important to me to give that overview. I think especially once you go outside of Florida or these population centers where you have a large concentration of Cuban American people, many aren't as familiar with the story. So I definitely wanted to give kind of an overview of the events and how they affected families like mine.
One of the I guess, political opinions lately is that we were somehow the bad guys by alienating ourselves from Cuba. But when it was first done, it was clearly understood that this was for the benefit of the Cubans who wanted to get away.
I mean, I think it's definitely been complicated, especially from an international relations perspective. And often you see that Cuba is sort of caught between major powers. I mean, that's certainly a big issue in the book with the Cold War playing out. Do you see how Cuba's really influenced by international affairs and vice versa?
And you also have a bit of espionage in your book because Beatrice is recruited by the CIA.
Yes, I was really inspired by many of the CIA's real-life attempts on Fidel Castro's life, including using one of his mistresses to attempt to assassinate him. So I wanted to use a historical event and then insert my fictional character into that and give her sort of the opportunity to avenge some of the wrongs that had been done to her family.
We have a copy of the book? So
yes, it's wonderful.
If we have a listener who would like When We Left Cuba, I have a copy of the book, and you will just need to call me right now, 622-9622, and you can have the book. I will leave it here for you. Do you have it in both languages, in Spanish and English?
There will be a Spanish translation. We're still working out the details with that publisher, but right now it's available in English. All
right, let me give this one over real quick. Robin has one more question. Good morning. You're on the air. You got the book.
Hey, Larry. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Who's this?
Paul.
Paul, you got it. It'll be waiting for you here at the station.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Paul.
I just wanted to say that your book also is a Reese Witherspoon Book Club pick, so that is pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was a tremendous honor.
All right, very good. Well, good luck with everything. It looks like you're doing really well. Thank you for being on the show with us today, Chanel.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Real quickly, do you have a website?
I do. It's www.ChanelCleeton.com.
All right, thank you. I'm glad I got that in. ChanelCleeton.com. All right, we'll be right back.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster.